That foal's not going to make it through the night, the rancher whispered, shaking his head as he turned away from the empty ditch. But just as the first rays of dawn lit the valley, they appeared. 6 shadows closing in. Wolves, predators, ready to finish what nature started. Or so everyone thought, until one old wolf did something no one could explain. Welcome to MS Incredible Stories. Let's uncover what really happened. Before the sun breached the horizon, Freya settled on a low rise overlooking the ditch, her amber eyes never wavering from Aurora's fragile form. The chill pressed in, yet the old wolf's thick pelt held a quiet warmth, a silent promise of company. Each breath Freya exhaled drifted skyward, a gentle plume in the pre-dawn air. Aurora lay motionless, every inhale a labor. Freya's ears pricked at the faintest rustle beyond the reeds, stakes in the air that whispered of danger. Scavengers, marauders of the hungry night. She rose, paw raised mid-step, and scanned the shadows. Satisfied there were no immediate threats, she returned her gaze to the foal, lowering herself back to the ground with deliberate care. Dew-soaked grass whispered beneath her weight as she padded closer, stopping just beyond reach. Freya's muzzle twitched at the scent of dried blood and dust stuck to Aurora's coat. She inhaled deeply, tasting salt and fear. Then, with a soft exhalation, she settled her chin on her forepaws, eyes locked on the foal's retreating consciousness. Minutes stretched like hours. The sky above shifted from ink to muted lavender, but Freya did not blink. A distant jay cried. Freya's ears swiveled, but she did not flinch. Her vigil was absolute, a steadfast guard against a world that had abandoned this young life. Aurora's chest fluttered as she stirred, her eyelids quivering. A faint nicker drifted up to Freya, who responded with a gentle hiss, half warning, half reassurance. Slowly, the pack's matriarch rose and padded to the edge of the ditch. She lowered her head and nudged a brittle twig away from Aurora's side, clearing a patch of earth so the foal could stretch. Freya paused, head bent low, and for a moment the distance between predator and prey vanished. Aurora attempted to push herself up, legs trembling like saplings in a gale. Freya watched, unwavering, as the foal's hooves found purchase in the sodden soil. When Aurora's body finally lifted, unsteady and frail, Freya gave a subtle tilt of her head, as though guiding her. And as the sky brightened in pale gold, Freya remained at her post, a silent sentinel whose loyalty defied every instinct, a wolf who chose compassion over hunger in the heart of the wilderness. The air was crisp before dawn, each breath a ghost of warmth that vanished against the chill. Aurora lay curled in the muddy ditch, her slender legs tucked beneath her trembling body. A thin veil of mist clung to the tall grass, concealing her small form until a soft nicker escaped her parched muzzle. She struggled to lift her heavy head, sunken eyes recording only shadows and silence. Behind her, the distant silhouettes of her herd drifted across the meadow's ridge, oblivious to her plight. Pain pulsed through Aurora's legs as she tried again, heart pounding like distant thunder. The world felt vast and empty, her mother's comforting presence no more than a fading heartbeat in her memory. Hunger gnawed at her belly, thirst burned in her throat, and every shallow breath felt like a Herculean effort. Somewhere beyond the mist, a lone raven cawed, its cry echoing like a warning. Aurora's ears flicked toward the sound, and she realized she was utterly alone. Panic seized her chest, and with a startled whinny, she attempted to scramble forward, but her legs buckled beneath her, sinking her deeper into the churned earth. Each struggle sent cold droplets of mud clinging to her coat. Exhaustion washed over her in waves, lulling her toward blackness. Then, through the gray gloom, an unexpected stir, hushed footfalls weaving through the reeds. Aurora lifted her head with newfound desperation, her wide eyes focusing on the shapes emerging from the mist. 6 wolves, lean and sinewed, moved with uncanny grace. Their pale eyes glowed faintly, watching her with an intensity that made her heart seize. For one heartbeat, predator and prey shared a suspended moment. Aurora's chest heaved, but she held her breath as the pack circled the ditch's rim. Their coats blended with the dim light. Ashen grays and umber browns that seemed born of the pre-dawn mist itself. Her instincts screamed to flee, but her body refused to obey. Beneath her fear rose a flicker of something else. Curiosity. The lead wolf paused, head tilted as though reading her pain. Aurora felt a sudden stillness, as if the world had drawn in its breath and waited. And in that fragile hush before the sunrise, the unlikely vigil began. Elena Carter paused at the edge of the meadow, binoculars pressed to her eyes, heart pounding in her chest. She had followed the GPS signal of the collared matriarch for days, expecting only routine tracking data. Instead, her breath caught as she saw Freya, distinctive scar along her flank, standing watch over a young foal nestled in a muddy ditch. She lowered the binoculars and fumbled for her camera, hands trembling. The dawn light was perfect for documentation, but the scene before her felt impossible. A predator keeping vigil over potential prey? She forced herself to stay hidden behind a sagebrush cluster, mindful to avoid a disturbance. Every scientist in her field station had trained her to observe without interfering, but her pulse raced with the urge to intervene. Through the lens, she captured Freya's amber gaze fixed on the foal, the mare's ribs faintly showing beneath her thick coat. Aurora's coat bore the grime of days alone, her ribs pressing tight under skin that trembled with each breath. Elena's chest tightened. How long had the foal lain here? How had she survived? A sharp breeze carried the scent of pine and sage, but beneath it, Elena caught a sweeter note. Damp earth, the faint musk of fear, and something else. The earthy tang of animal care that Freya exuded in every careful, deliberate movement. She snapped photo after photo, mindful of her breathing, careful not to shift too abruptly. Her mind raced with questions. Was this a one-time anomaly or a previously undocumented behavior? How could she prove what she was seeing without drawing a human presence too close? She needed evidence, visual proof, GPS logs, perhaps even the wolf's own tracking data. A distant caw from a raven reminded her of the urgency. Elena set her camera on a low tripod, programmed it for time-lapse shots, then retreated further into the whispering grass. From this vantage, she radioed her colleague, Mark, his voice crackling in her earpiece. "Mark, you're not going to believe this," she whispered. "Get the mobile unit ready and bring the portable corral kit. And leave it in the truck until I say otherwise." As she watched Freya circle the foal once more, Elena realized she was witnessing a discovery that could redefine everything known about predator-prey dynamics. Her pulse steadied, resolve hardening. She would record every moment and protect this fragile miracle of the wilderness. Dawn's first light painted the meadow in shades of rose and gold as Freya led her pack into a loose semicircle around the ditch. Each wolf paused at measured intervals, heads lowered, eyes intent on Aurora's fragile form. The morning air vibrated with soft panting and the distant hum of insects awakening. Elena crouched behind a sagebrush, camera at the ready, her breath steadying as she observed the pack's choreography. They moved with subtle precision, spacing themselves like sentinels in a living fortress. Freya stood closest, half turned toward her kin, but never breaking her vigil. The younger wolves fanned out, noses to the ground, tails sweeping with anticipation. None made a move toward the foal's throat or haunches, only careful, deliberate steps as if they were mapping the boundaries of an invisible favor. Aurora, emboldened by the protective circle, shifted on her side and cast a timid glance at one of the subordinates, a lithe adolescent with speckled pelt. The wolf blinked, nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of the foal's fear and need. Instead of advancing, he settled on his haunches, head tilted as though studying a puzzle. Elena's finger hovered over the shutter, capturing the pack's quiet watchfulness. Her pulse quickened. This was not mere tolerance, but an investigation, a collective curiosity that transcended hunger. She adjusted her zoom to track the wolves' expressions. Ears cocked forward, soft whimpers exchanged, cargo of unspoken questions between them. A sudden breeze rippled through the meadow, carrying with it the faint jingle of Elena's equipment. Instantly, one wolf, tall and charcoal-furred, lifted his head and sniffed the air, muscles coiling for flight. Freya responded with a low rumble that vibrated through the earth. The charcoal wolf relaxed, letting out a soft whine before lying down again. Silence reigned once more, broken only by Aurora's shallow breathing. The foal raised her head and attempted to push herself on trembling legs, drawing a ripple of attention from the pack. Freya nudged her gently with the tip of her snout, guiding her movement. Elena exhaled slowly, awed by the scene unfolding. This ring of predators, driven by something other than instinct, was a living testament to compassion born of curiosity. In that moment, she felt the weight of her responsibility, not only to document but to safeguard this fragile alliance before the world rushed in and shattered it forever. Aurora's legs trembled as she attempted to shift, the effort sending a shiver through her frail frame. Freya watched from the edge of the ditch, head lowered in patient anticipation. Then, with a careful step, the matriarch descended into the shallow hollow, her padded paws stirring loose earth. Aurora's heart hammered at the soft sound of claws on soil, fear flaring in her wide eyes. But Freya made no threatening move. Instead, she paused mere inches away, amber gaze meeting the foal's glow of panic. For a heartbeat, predator and prey shared the same breath. Then Freya dipped her muzzle and pressed it gently against Aurora's damp forehead. The touch was feather-light, but carried warmth that seeped into the foal's trembling bones. Aurora blinked, confusion softening her fear. Freya's whiskers brushed over the foal's coat, sweeping away grit and dust in broad, deliberate sweeps. The cold morning air carried the scent of sage and moss, but beneath it was the richer odor of the wolf's fur, earthy and reassuring. Freya shifted again, nuzzled deepening into a tender pressure at Aurora's neck. Her warm breath fanned across the foal's skin, and for the first time since the storm, Aurora felt something akin to safety. Freya's ears twitched as she listened for any sign of danger, yet her body remained relaxed, her focus singularly on Aurora. The other wolves watched from the rim of the ditch, heads cocked, as if granting Freya permission to care. Aurora's muscles, stiff and sore, began to relax. She lowered her head and, in a weak but hopeful gesture, nudged Freya's nose with her own. That simple contact seemed to cement an unspoken bond. Freya responded with a soft exhalation, ear tips flicking back in a gesture almost maternal. Aurora swayed, then settled back against the muddy side, her breathing slowing to a gentle rhythm. Elena, hidden behind the sagebrush, felt tears prick her eyes as she pressed the shutter. The images she captured would later astound scientists and animal lovers alike. A wolf's nuzzle, not a bite. Compassion, not carnage. As Freya rose and padded back to the pack's perimeter, Aurora watched her go, head resting against the ditch wall. And in that fragile moment of kindness, a new story of survival, and of empathy written in fur and hoof prints, was born. Aurora's throat felt raw, her voice a frail whisper against the vast silence. With Freya's departure, the foal lay alone, every muscle trembling from exhaustion. Yet something stirred within her, a spark of hope wrapped in warmth. Gathering her last reserves of strength, Aurora managed a feeble nicker that trembled through the dawn air. Her call drifted upward, small as a breath, but it carried the weight of her need. The pack halted mid-stride, ears lifting as if each wolf heard a summons meant only for them. Freya, alerted by the sound, turned and padded back toward the ditch, her posture a gentle arch that said, "I'm here." Encouraged, Aurora attempted to push herself forward, legs quivering like young saplings in a storm. Each movement was agony, but when Freya nudged her side with a soft grunt, the foal persevered. Pain flared, but beneath it, The knowledge that she was not alone lent her courage. Elena watched through the lens, heart clenched with awe. The nicker, faint yet clear, would become the anthem of Aurora's survival, a testament to the fragile will that refused to yield. Behind Elena, the horizon glowed with promise, as if the earth itself leaned in to witness this act of communion. Freya dipped her head and nudged Aurora's flank, guiding her toward a patch of firm ground just beyond the ditch. Aurora, responding to the matriarch's silent encouragement, managed to lift her chest higher, legs bracing against the earth. Her nicker came again, stronger this time, a fragile but triumphant song. The wolves at the circle's edge closed ranks, moving closer in protective formation. No threat passed their keen eyes. Instead, they offered a living embrace of fur and muscle around the foal. Aurora exhaled, her legs trembling but holding, and for the first time since the storm that separated her, she felt the steady pulse of life returning. In that sacred moment, predator and prey were bound by a single thread, a feeble nicker that spoke volumes. And as the pack's watchful silhouettes stood guard, Aurora found strength in her own voice, discovering that even the smallest cry can echo with unwavering resolve. Elena Carter pressed herself against a granite boulder, camera poised on her knee, fingers numb from the morning chill. Each click captured fragments of an impossible scene. Freya's steady gaze, Aurora's cautious movements, and the wolves' silent communion around the foal. Elena's breath fogged the viewfinder, but she refused to lower her grip. She reviewed one shot, Freya's whiskers brushing Aurora's mane, dew glinting like diamonds on stray hairs. The image felt surreal, proof of a bond that defied every textbook she had studied. Yet Elena knew that a single photograph could be dismissed as an anomaly or staged illusion. She needed more: sequences, angles, timestamps. With painstaking care, she adjusted the zoom to frame the pack's perimeter. The adolescent wolf hovered at the edge of the circle, posture relaxed yet vigilant. Elena counted the frames, 72 shots, and still climbing, each one more astonishing than the last. Her heart thundered as she imagined the scientific papers, the headlines, the debates this evidence would ignite. A stray gust rustled the grass, and one wolf lifted its head, nostrils flaring. Elena froze, holding her breath as the creature sniffed the air. Freya sent a low rumble through the ground, and the adolescent settled back down. Elena's hand shook as she captured the exchange, knowing she was witnessing deterrence, not aggression. She switched lenses to a wider angle, aiming to include the distant ridge where Aurora's herd had grazed hours before. A pale shaft of sunlight broke over the hill, illuminating the scene in ethereal gold. The pack's silhouettes glowed against the meadow, guardians in a living tableau. Elena captured the panorama in a single sweep, then shifted to macro shots of paw prints encircling the foal. Silence pressed in around her, broken only by the shutter's mechanical rhythm. No human voice would intrude on this delicate balance. Elena vowed to respect the wolves' trust. Her documentation was silent, unobtrusive, a tribute to their story. As she lined up one final shot, Freya's nuzzle brushing Aurora's muzzle, Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Here lay the genesis of a new understanding, frozen forever in light and shadow. She lowered her camera and whispered into her recorder, "This is the moment compassion rewrote the rules." Then, with steady hands, she pressed record, knowing that these silent images would speak louder than any words. Dusk edged closer as the pack stirred, nostrils flaring at the scent of carrion carried on the cooling breeze. One by one, the wolves slipped away from the ditch's rim, fading into the grasses before returning with offerings clutched gently in their jaws. Scraps of elk, bits of rabbit, even a fractured bone from a recent deer kill. Each wolf approached Aurora with the gift in turn, dropping the morsel on the ground beside her. Freya lingered longest, her pale eyes watching the foal's reaction as though gauging whether the offering would be understood. Aurora sniffed at the first piece of meat, confusion rippling through her muscles. Hunger warred with instinct, Sheer terror of the wolf's nature warred with the undeniable ache in her belly. Freya gave a soft rumble of encouragement, an echo of the growls that had driven off coyotes earlier. Trembling, Aurora's teeth grazed the carrion. She recoiled, then pressed forward, grazing again, this time tasting the rich, coppery flavor of blood and sinew. Freya's tail wagged in subtle approval, the motion so gentle it might have gone unnoticed by any but the most attentive observer. The younger wolves sat back, eyes bright, watching the foal's tentative feast. One adolescent padded forward, nose twitching, and nudged another fragment toward Aurora. When the foal hungrily lunged, the wolf lay down, its head tilted with pride. Elena's camera captured the ritual, predator gifting prey, sustenance offered by those who might have torn her apart. The images were astonishing, wolves sharing their kill rather than defending it fiercely. In the twilight's creeping shadows, she dared to step closer, mindful of maintaining a respectful distance. She snapped frames of the varied offerings, clumps of fur entangled in sinew, marrow-rich bone, tender muscle strands. Each piece told its own story of survival and sacrifice. Elena's fingertips brushed cold metal as she adjusted exposure, ensuring the depth of color and texture would echo the raw beauty of the moment. Aurora's ribs shone under her glossy coat as she gnawed at the bone's edge. Thirst and hunger sated a little more with each bite. Freya lay beside her, watching with the solemn pride of a guardian. As the last light faded, the pack gathered quietly, forming a protective ring around the foal. Aurora ate until her sides pressed full, then nuzzled Freya's side in gratitude. In that shared meal beneath a bruised sky, predator and prey had forged an alliance stronger than hunger, bound by the unlikeliest of gifts. Aurora's belly swelled with newfound strength as she rested against the ditch wall, the pack's warmth pressing in around her. But the fragile peace shattered in an instant when a sharp yip split the still air. Ferline shapes burst from the brush, a coyote pack, gaunt and desperate, eyes glinting with hunger. Freya's ears snapped upright, and her muscles coiled like springs. With a low, resonant growl, she rose, back arching into a hostile stance. The adolescent wolves formed ranks beside her, fur bristling as they encircled Aurora. Aurora's heart thundered, but she stayed frozen, trusting the wolves' protection. The coyotes crouched at the ridge's edge, hackles tall, sizing up their adversaries. Then one lunged, jaws snapping at the nearest wolf's flank. Freya responded in a blur of motion, teeth bared, intercepting the attacker midair. The adolescent wolves flanked the others, jaws snapping in tandem, driving snarls that rattled the silence. Elena's camera recorded every moment, paws striking earth, fangs flashing, dust swirling in the savage circle. She pressed herself flat against a rock, heart in her throat. The wolves moved with disciplined unity. Freya led with brutal grace, algae gray coat gleaming in the dying light. A coyote yelped as a younger wolf pinned it by the leg, hackles rippling in triumph. Another sprang at Freya's side only to recoil as she sank her fangs into its shoulder. The pitch of cries and growls rose and fell like a savage symphony. Miraculously, not one wolf broke rank or threatened Aurora. Freya barked a command, and the adolescent wolves surged forward in a synchronized charge that sent the coyotes retreating in disarray. The attackers skidded back into the underbrush, yips of panic trailing them like loose threads. Silence fell again, broken only by Aurora's ragged breathing and the wolves panting. Freya approached the foal, nose lowered in a gesture of victory and reassurance. Aurora managed a trembling nicker, nuzzling Freya's flank as the pack closed around her in a protective halo. Elena exhaled, her hands shaking as she lowered the camera. She had witnessed a miracle twice over, the wolves' compassion and now their unwavering defense. In that thorny moment of ambush and alliance, Aurora found not only food and warmth but fierce guardianship, a living testament to a bond that transcended instinct and reshaped the meaning of the wild. Elena's heart pounded as she scribbled notes in her field journal, the adrenaline still warm from the pack's defense against the coyotes. She stared at the margin where her sketches of Freya's posture met Aurora's nuzzle, torn between scientific rigor and maternal instinct. Protocol demanded she maintain distance, observe objectively, and let nature take its course. But Aurora's fragile form, still shivering from the skirmish, begged for human intervention. Her radio crackled to life, Mart's concerned voice cutting through the static. "Elena, status report? We're ready with the corral and vet team, but you sounded uncertain." She hesitated, glancing at Aurora. The foal's legs trembled as she tried to rise, and Freya remained by her side, eyes watchful. Elena swallowed hard. "They did it," she whispered, voice thick. "The wolves, they protected her. She's still alive." Mark exhaled in relief, but Elena could sense the unspoken urgency. "We can move in now," he urged. "We'll get her stabilized before nightfall." She lowered her camera, torn. Invasive action risked fracturing the trust Freya had forged. One wrong move could send the pack scattering, or worse, provoke aggression to defend their charge. Yet withholding help could condemn Aurora to another night of exposure and unknown dangers. Elena weighed the evidence. Aurora's vital signs were weak but stable, dehydration fading under Freya's ministrations. The pack's unity suggested they would not abandon her. But how long could they sustain this vigil? Mark's voice came again, softer now. "We've got the portable stallion muzzle, sterile blankets, and 4 fluids. We're 5 minutes out." She closed her eyes, recalling Freya's nuzzle, the wolf's protective ring. This was no longer a controlled experiment. It was a living, breathing covenant. Elena exhaled, decision made. "Hold," she said firmly. "Let them finish their vigil. We'll wait until sunrise." Mark protested, but she stood her ground. "Document this. Every minute counts." She set her jaw, raising her camera once more. The pack's bearing shifted as the first pale light of dawn brushed the meadow, and Elena knew she had chosen to honor the ancient bond rather than rush in. Whatever the outcome, her research would bear witness to a new chapter in understanding the wild. Elena waited until the pack had drifted into the grasses to scavenge nearby. Heart thudding, she retrieved a small bundle from her backpack, sterile blankets folded tight, electrolyte sachets, and a collapsible water bowl. She glanced over her shoulder, no wolves in sight, then crept forward on soft toes. The frost-coated ground crackled beneath her careful steps as she approached the ditch's rim. Aurora lay huddled in mud, eyes half closed but flickering at every sound. Knee-deep in adrenaline, Elena set the blankets on a rock ledge just beyond the foal's reach. Next to them, she placed a packet of electrolytes and the water bowl. Her fingers trembled as she untied the sachets and poured the pale powder into a droplet of water she carried in her field flask, then folded the mixture into an empty vial. She tucked it into the blanket's folds. One misstep, one shard of twig underfoot, would summon the wolves back, so she moved with excruciating slowness. Elena paused, studying Aurora's fragile chest, rising and falling. She wished she could stroke the foal's neck, but knew that contact would shatter the unspoken truce. Instead, she whispered an apology into the cold air and straightened, backing away without turning her back on the ditch. She reached for the water bowl, snapped it open, and tipped it so the inside caught early sunlight. When she eased it to the ground, the reflection glimmered like a beacon. The bowl sat a few feet from Aurora, a silent invitation. Then Elena slipped behind a sagebrush and watched, breath held. Moments later, Aurora's ears flicked, and she lifted her head, nostrils flaring at the scent of fresh water. Aurora managed a shuffle, pressing her muzzle into the bowl and lapping the cold liquid with weak determination. Elena's throat tightened. Satisfied, Elena retreated, leaving the blankets and vial in place. She glanced back once, eyes meeting Aurora's glazed gaze before the foal dipped her head to drink again. With that, Elena slipped away, her secret gift delivered under the wolves' oblivious watch. Moonlight washed the meadow in silver as Aurora drifted into uneasy sleep, her breath shallow against the night's chill. Freya settled beside the ditch, her flank pressed close enough to share warmth, but far enough not to crowd. Pale grass whispered under both their weight. Above them, stars shimmered in crystal clarity, and the moon's arc cast elongated shadows across the hollow. The pack formed a loose ring beyond the ditch's edge, silhouettes etched against the pale glow. Each wolf lay alert, ears swiveling at every rustle of sage or distant cry. Even in rest, their bodies tensed like drawn bows, ready to spring to Aurora's defense. Elena crouched behind a granite outcrop 50 yards away, her flashlight off, eyes adjusting to the dim. She held her breath, notebook in hand, recording every detail. Freya's slow, rhythmic sighs, the subdull wolf's paw flicking at an errant blade of grass, the rising mist that curled around Aurora's muzzle. Her notes blurred as tears welled in her eyes. Witnessing this silent guardianship felt sacred. A distant coyote's lament sliced through the stillness. Instantly, the wolves' ears pricked and their heads snapped up. Freya rose, hackles bristling, and padded to the ditch's mouth. Aurora stirred, eyelids fluttering, and Freya nuzzled her nape, soothing her back to rest. The coyotes never showed, perhaps deterred by the pack's fierce reputation. Time stretched. Elena watched as Luna climbed higher, the moonlight brightening the meadow in pale luminescence. Freya shifted position, curling her massive frame into a protective arc. Aurora's full form, slight and vulnerable, nestled into that arc as if seeking a fortress. An owl hooted from a nearby juniper, and the pack responded with a soft chorus of whimpers and croons, a lullaby of solidarity. Elena's heart ached at the beauty of it. Predator and prey bound by shared vigilance under the moon. As the hours slid toward dawn, mist thickened around the ditch, and Aurora's breath slowed into long, peaceful draws. Freya remained steadfast, eyes half closed, but never fully surrendered to sleep. When Elena finally retreated at the first hint of gray, she carried with her the indelible image of moonlit guardianship, a testament to devotion that needed no words. Elena hesitated at the dawn light as Mark approached, lugging the portable stallion muzzle and a small medical kit. He offered a reassuring nod, but she caught the tension in his shoulders. The equipment could restrain Aurora safely for treatment, yet deploying it risked provoking Freya's wrath. They moved silently, boots muffled by dew-wet grass. Elena pointed toward the ditch, where the pack lay dozing in fragmented arcs, Freya always nearest Aurora's side. Mark set down the muzzle and opened the kit, revealing leather straps and soft padding designed to minimize stress. Elena's throat tightened. "We need to calm her without alarming the wolves," she whispered. Mark nodded, lifting a vial of mild sedative. Just enough to make her manageable, not unconscious. They crept closer, hearts pounding in unison. Aurora stirred at their approach, head lifting, ears flicking toward the intruders. Freya's eyes snapped open, and she rose, hackles flaring in a silent warning. Elena froze as Freya bounded forward, placing herself squarely between Aurora and the humans. Mark raised hands to show they meant no harm. Elena swallowed and spoke softly, voice barely above a breeze. "We're here to help." She knelt slowly, revealing the muzzle. Aurora's eyes, glazed with weariness, flicked between the humans and her guardian. Freya's hackles remained raised, but she did not advance. Instead, she paced, eyes never leaving Elena. With trembling hands, Elena opened the muzzle straps and coaxed Aurora's head toward her. The foal flinched, and Freya emitted a low growl that reverberated through the meadow. Elena paused, guilt pressing like cold stone. Then, slowly, she withdrew the sedative and bottle, laying them on a flat rock. "No sedative," she said, voice firm. Mark exhaled relief. "We'll trust her to stay calm." They worked quickly. Mark gently lifted Aurora's muzzle, and Elena eased the leather into place, fastening the straps with deliberate care. Aurora trembled, but did not resist, guided by Freya's unwavering gaze. The matriarch stood guard, a silent sentinel. When the muzzle was secure, Elena produced a syringe of fluids and administered a slow drip under Aurora's neck. The foal's breathing steadied. Freya pressed close, offering a reassuring nudge. Elena met Mark's eyes. "We did it together," she murmured, gratitude echoing in her chest. In that delicate collaboration between human intent and wolf consent, they had bridged two worlds for Aurora's survival. Elena's hands trembled as she flipped on her phone's camera, initiating the live stream that would carry this miracle to thousands. She raised the device, carefully framing Aurora in the ditch, muzzle in place, with Freya standing sentinel at her side. The viewfinder glowed with comments and hearts cascading upward. Viewers already mesmerized. "Good morning, everyone," Elena whispered, voice hushed with awe. "We're broadcasting from the Ruby Mountain Meadow, where an extraordinary bond continues to unfold." She panned slowly, capturing the pack's watchful formation. Aurora's ears flicked at the soft click of the phone. Freya, ever vigilant, paused and met the camera's gaze, amber eyes reflecting unwavering devotion. Elena's heart clenched. "There," she murmured, "that's Freya, matriarch of the pack, refusing to leave Aurora's side." Comments exploded. "Unbelievable. Tears. Nature's miracle." Aurora shifted, attempting to raise her head. Elena zoomed in as the foal blinked, nostrils flaring with cautious hope. "She's responding well to the fluids," Elena explained, voice trembling. "Look at her strength." Freya dipped her muzzle, licking Aurora's neck, and the chat lit up with applause emojis. A stray viewer question popped up. "Is it safe to interfere?" Elena inhaled, resisting the urge to lecture. Instead, she summarized the delicate balance they'd maintained, documenting without disruption, offering minimal aid in partnership with the wolves. "We're guided by Freya's trust," she said softly. "This is their vigil as much as ours." Mark appeared at her shoulder, giving a discreet thumbs up. Elena switched the camera to him and back, offering glimpses of the portable muzzle, the water bowl, the surrounding pack. Each visual reinforced the truth viewers craved. This was no staged act, but a living testament. Minutes passed like lifetimes as Aurora's breathing evened, the muzzle's straps held snug. Freya's silhouette shifted as she paced a gentle circuit, eyes never leaving the foal. "It looks like she's going to make it," Elena whispered, tears pooling. Comments flooded. "Bless this wolf. I can't believe it. Nature equals love." When Aurora managed a weak nicker, Freya dipped her head in reply, and the live stream chat erupted in celebration. Elena lowered the phone, voice choked. "Thank you, Freya," she murmured. "Thank you." In that shared moment, captured and live, the world witnessed compassion rewritten in the wild. Reporters arrived in a caravan of dusty trucks, cameras trained on the meadow as if it were holy ground. By midday, a satellite news van had set up its dish near Elena's camp, technicians scurrying to establish a live feed. Headlines flashed on their monitor. "Wolf saves foal," and "Nature's compassion captured on camera." Elena watched from her tent, anxiety knotting her stomach. Publicity threatened the fragile balance. Too many humans would spook the pack or draw well-meaning but disruptive volunteers. Through the open flap, she glimpsed Freya's scarred silhouette beyond the ditch, still guarding Aurora. Park rangers on ATVs patrolled the perimeter, warning onlookers to keep their distance. A crowd of onlookers gathered beyond the tape. Curious hikers, wildlife photographers, even a local politician hoping to ride the wave of public emotion. Their whispers and camera clicks felt like a swarm of flies around a healing wound. Elena met Mark beside the water tanks. "They'll push in closer," she warned. He nodded, worry etched into his brow. "I've spoken with the park administrator. They want to air it as prime time tomorrow." That evening, as the golden light slanted across the meadow, Elena noticed tension rippling through the pack. Freya's ears twitched at distant voices, and the younger wolves trotted skittishly around the ditch. Aurora, muzzle secure, pressed close to Freya's side, seeking reassurance. A booming voice echoed from the fringe, a reporter declaring a miracle of the wild before pointing a microphone toward the ditch. Freya's low growl rattled the air, and the reporter recoiled. Elena dashed forward, hands raised in peace. "Please give them space," she implored. Some retreated, but others advanced, gadgets outstretched. The wolves stiffened, hackles raised, and Aurora shied back toward Freya. Fear prickled Elena's skin. If the pack fled or turned protective, Aurora's only safeguards would vanish. Under the simmering sky, Elena realized that the true challenge had begun, navigating the unrest of human fascination to preserve the miracle unfolding. She exhaled and raised her voice above the commotion. "This is their story, not ours. Let's respect their space." A hush fell, and for a moment, humans obeyed. As cameras lowered and footsteps stilled, Freya relaxed slightly, the pack drifting back. Elena offered a trembling smile. Miracles drew attention, but safeguarding them required courage and restraint. Just as dusk settled over the meadow, Freya tensed, muscles coiling beneath her fur. Elena followed her gaze to the tree-line, where shapes flickered in the gathering gloom. With a low warning growl, Freya rose and padded forward, the pack fanning out behind her. Aurora lifted her head, eyes wide but trusting. Elena sprinted after them, heart pounding. Through a gap in the trees, she glimpsed a line of horses galloping toward the clearing. Aurora's herd, spooked by the earlier commotion, sprinting homeward. Their thunderous approach stirred the wolves into action. Freya darted to intercept, positioning herself between the herd and the foal's ditch. Bronze mares and stallions whipped around the edge of the meadow, nostrils flaring, bellies tight with alarm. Aurora's mother emerged at the rear, coat gleaming in the last light. The stallions charged forward, hooves battering earth, displaying aggression toward the interlopers. Freya held her ground, hackles bristling, lips curled in a silent snarl that spoke volumes. This foal belonged to her charge. Elena skidded to a stop, capturing the standoff on her phone. The horses reared, hooves slashing the air, but Freya's unwavering stance drew their respect. Aurora whinnied, a high-pitched call that echoed across the field. The mother horse halted, wounded panic in her eyes, then recognized Aurora's form. In a heartbeat, the herd paused. Freya lowered her head in a gesture of peace, and the stallion's charging hooves slowed to cautious steps. One by one, the horses crept forward, noses extended in tentative greeting. Freya's pack melted back, forming a protective ring around Aurora as the herd pressed in. Aurora staggered to her hooves, trembling but determined, and nickered at her mother. The mare dipped her head, pressing warm muzzle against her foal, and the rest of the herd relaxed, their bodies swaying with relief. Freya watched, amber eyes softening, before she melted into the shadows with her pack, leaving Aurora enveloped in equine reunion. Elena exhaled, tears of wonder stinging her cheeks. She had witnessed two worlds collide and reconcile, forged by compassion and trust. In that fleeting moment of shadows and flight, predator and prey, wild and wildborn, honored each other's place under the same sky. Aurora's legs quivered as she steadied herself, the adrenaline of reunion still thrumming through her veins. Elena crouched behind a cluster of sagebrush, watching the foal take tentative steps toward her mother, then shifting her gaze to Freya's fading silhouette slipping into the tree line. She knew if she didn't follow, the pack and the story would vanish into the wilderness. She shouldered her camera bag and slipped through the underbrush, careful to follow the faint hoofprints that trampled dew-glazed grass. The forest edge loomed ahead, golden pines swaying against a pastel sky. Freya's tracks cut a winding path between trunks, weaving around fallen logs and rocky outcrops. Elena's pulse quickened as she matched pace with the silent trail. Branches crackled underfoot, and distant bird calls echoed through the cool air. Every time Elena paused, she caught sight of a flattened patch of needles or a dark smear of wolf fur on bark. The trail led deeper into a secluded valley where the canopy thickened, filtering sunlight into shifting mosaics on the forest floor. Elena's mind raced with possibilities, The cabin Freya and her pack had chosen must be abandoned, its shelter offering safety from storms and predators. How many nights had Aurora been guarded here before Elena arrived? She swallowed, setting her jaw and creeping forward. A low whine drifted through the trees, and Elena froze. The plea tugged at her heart. She followed the sound around a moss-clad boulder, then gasped. Freya stood at the entrance of a half-collapsed cabin, her posture wary but proud, and Aurora lay inside on a bed of pine needles, eyes closed but chest rising steadily. The cabin's weathered logs were draped in lichen, and the roof sagged under years of neglect. Yet inside, it felt like a sanctuary. Freya's pack lounged on the perimeter, tense as Elena approached. She knelt at the threshold, mindful of their territorial instinct. Slowly, she raised her camera and captured the tableau. Aurora nestled in makeshift comfort, wolves vigilantly encircling her. Elena exhaled, voice soft. "This is it," she whispered into her recorder. The hidden haven where compassion found refuge. As she pressed record, she realized she had uncovered not just a trail, but a testament to survival. A story carved in paw prints and weathered wood. The sky bled crimson as dusk settled over the clearing, the cabin's silhouette etched against a fiery horizon. Freya stood at the doorframe, ears pricked, muscles coiled like springs. Aurora huddled behind her, legs trembling though her breathing was steadier than before. Elena stepped into the cabin's threshold, camera poised but body tense. Beyond the open door, a pair of park rangers emerged with torches and voices raised in cautious command. They halted at the edge of the clearing, rifle slung but hands hovering near gear. Their headlights swept the cabin's rotting timbers, illuminating the pack's watchful gaze. Freya's eyes narrowed, and the other wolves flattened their ears, hackles rising in a collective ripple of warning. Elena raised a hand in peaceful greeting, voice steady though her pulse thundered. "They're safe," she called to the rangers. "I've been documenting everything. They won't harm Aurora." One ranger stepped forward, torch angled toward the foal's muzzle and the portable muzzle strapped in place. "We've orders to recover the foal and bring her to the vet unit," he said, voice edged with urgency. Freya's growl rolled like distant thunder. She lowered her head and advanced a step, blocking Aurora from view. The ranger's jaw clenched. He took a cautious step up the cabin's broken stoop. Elena hurried to intercept, hands raised. "Please wait," she urged. "We need to ensure the wolves won't be startled." Inside, Aurora tucked her head against Freya's leg, whiskers brushing the wolf's fur. Freya's stance was rigid protection. Any human who crossed this threshold without care risked provoking a defense. The other wolves fanned out behind her, forming a living barricade. The ranger exhaled, glancing at Elena. Between them lay a fragile line. Rushing in could send the pack into a frenzy, driving them and Aurora deeper into the wilderness. Elena met his eyes. "Let me guide you," she offered. One at a time, slowly, with no sudden moves. He nodded, sighing. The moon's first silver sliver crept overhead as Elena led the ranger forward, speaking words of calm reassurance. Freya did not shift, but her growls softened to a steady rumble, the pack's tension easing fractionally. In that tense twilight, predator and protector stood united against intrusion, and humanity found its place not as conqueror, but as careful steward of a miracle that could slip away with a single misstep. As dawn's pale light filtered through the pines, the ranger team led Aurora from the cabin on quiet hoofsteps, each footfall cushioned by pine needles and earth. Elena paused at the threshold, camera lowered, as Freya watched in silent vigil. The pack remained still, eyes fixed, tension coiled in every sinew. Aurora's mother stood nearby, anxious but held at bay by gentle shouts and outstretched arms. The foal hesitated at the edge of the clearing, muzzle brushing against Freya's flank in farewell. Freya's amber gaze held a depth of sorrow and triumph, as though passing a torch. Elena spoke softly into her recorder. "The wolves remain at the boundary, honoring their promise." Freya stepped forward, placing a single paw print in the soft earth before retreating to the cabin's shadow. The younger wolves echoed her movement, a measured retreat in perfect unison. Aurora nickered once, a trembling note of gratitude. She turned toward her mother, who nuzzled her gently before leading her toward waiting vehicles. The ranger lifted Aurora into a sling, careful to support her weakened legs. Freya watched the scene, body still and proud, until engines rumbled beyond the trees. One by one, the wolves slipped into the forest, Freya last to vanish, her silhouette dissolving among trunks and underbrush. Elena held her breath, straining for one final glimpse, but the noonday mist swallowed the pack's form. Mark appeared beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Elena exhaled, voice hushed. They kept their word. He nodded, eyes on the spot where Freya had stood. Together, they stepped into the clearing, finding a single wolf track pressed into the soft soil. Elena knelt, tracing the print with a gloved finger. Promise kept, she whispered. The hoof prints leading away from the cabin belonged to Aurora's mother, but the wolf's mark remained, a silent testament. As the vehicles departed, Elena gathered her equipment, pausing once more to scan the tree-line. The forest was still, as if holding its breath in the aftermath of an unspoken covenant. Aurora's journey to recovery would continue under human care, but the wolves' legacy lingered in every footprint and every breath of that dawn-lit clearing. The cabin's hush embraced Aurora as the rangers and veterinary team settled her onto a bed of clean straw laid beside a flickering lantern. Elena lingered by the doorway, watching the gentle ministrations, a veterinarian's gloved hand pressing cool compresses to the foal's fevered flank, another softly palpating her ribcage. Aurora's breathing came easier now, each exhale a small victory. Elena circled the room, smoothing out stray blankets and adjusting the lantern to cast warmth across the foal's glossy coat. Sunlight slanted through the broken window pane, illuminating motes of dust that drifted like tiny sparks. The stale scent of pine needles mingled with antiseptic, creating an odd comfort. Here, in this half-ruin, life and care converged. A soft wickering sound drew Elena's gaze to the corner where Mark had arranged a small bucket of water and the portable muzzle lay folded upon a stool. The foal's shallow eyes fixed on the objects with wary recognition. Elena knelt, lifting the muzzle. Aurora's ears flicked, but when Elena spoke in quiet tones, "You're safe here," the foal's head dipped in acknowledgement. Outside, the rangers secured the cabin's perimeter, ensuring privacy. Inside, Aurora's legs stiffened as she attempted to shift. One of the vets moved in gently, guiding her hooves onto fresh straw and offering a syringe of electrolytes. The foal swallowed without protest, flinching only at the unfamiliar taste. Elena rose and crossed to the hearth's cold stones, retrieving a flannel cloth from her backpack. Dipping it in the bucket, she knelt beside Aurora and wiped away dried mud from the foal's flank. Aurora's skin gleamed beneath her muzzle as the cloth removed grit and sweat. Each gentle stroke seemed to soothe more than physical discomfort. It restored trust fractured by hardship. As Aurora settled, a soft knock sounded at the door. The pack's veterinarian ushered Freya's tracking collar through the gap. Elena picked it up, turning it over in her hands. It bore the matriarch's name and the GPS unit that had led them here. She pressed the collar gently to her heart before draping it across Aurora's stall rail. Aurora blinked, nostrils flaring at the familiar scent of the wolf. Elena watched tears gather, understanding that healing was not just in tending wounds, but in honoring bonds. In that quiet cabin, cradled by human care and shadowed by wild loyalty, the foal's recovery began anew. As darkness settled once more, Aurora lay nestled in her clean straw bed, lantern light casting soft shadows across her stall. The veterinary team had departed hours ago, leaving a lullaby of snores from the few rangers keeping watch. Aurora's breathing was steady now, each rise and fall a testament to her mended strength. Elena tiptoed through the cabin, careful not to disturb the sleeping foal. She paused by the window, gazing into the ink-black woods where her headlamp beam cut a slender path. The forest whispered with nocturnal life, crickets chirping, owls calling, and somewhere beyond the trees, the faint rustle of wolf paws on leaf litter. Memories of the wolves' vigil stirred her heart. She rose and retrieved Freya's tracking collar from the stall rail, slipping it around her wrist like a talisman. Stepping outside, the cold night air bit at her cheeks, but she welcomed its clarity. The moon, 3/4 full, glowed silver between swaying branches. Elena activated her headlamp and followed a narrow game trail that led away from the cabin. Her breaths came in quiet puffs as she navigated fallen logs and bracken. Every few paces, she paused to listen, hoping, yearning for the sound that had guided her before. Then, from the darkness ahead, she heard it, a soft crack of a twig, then the muted pad of paws on earth. Aurora's scent drifted on the breeze, but beneath it was something wilder, the warm musk of Freya's fur. Elena held her breath as shapes emerged, Freya at the front, then the pack arrayed behind, eyes glinting in the headlamp's glow. Freya paused, nostrils flaring as she recognized Elena's presence and the cabin's light behind her. Instead of retreating, the matriarch stepped closer, a solemn grace in every movement. Aurora's collar hung on Elena's wrist, a bridge between worlds. Elena knelt in the trail center, extending a gloved hand to Freya. The wolf's amber eyes softened, and she brushed Elena's fingers with her muzzle, a silent greeting. The rest of the pack settled in a loose circle around them, bodies relaxed yet alert. Minutes stretched, and Elena felt tears slip free. She spoke softly, voice carrying on the night wind. "Thank you," she whispered. Freya's tail lifted in acknowledgement before she and her pack slipped away into the moonlit forest, leaving Elena alone under the stars, her heart full of wonder and gratitude. The sky burned in shades of apricot and mauve as Elena led Aurora from the cabin's stable toward the open meadow. The foal's legs were stronger now, hooves clicking on packed earth instead of sinking in mud. Elena kept a gentle hand on Aurora's flank, guiding her toward the tree line where shadows flickered. Aurora paused at the forest's edge, ears pricked. From between the trunks emerged Freya, her coat gleaming in the dying light. At her side trotted two younger wolves, eyes bright with recognition. Aurora's ears flicked forward and, with a hesitant whinny, she stepped away from Elena into the half-light. Freya advanced, and Aurora nickered in greeting. The pair met in the clearing's rim, muzzles touching in a tender reunion. Behind them, the remainder of the herd emerged, stallions and mares moving down the slope, their silhouettes graceful against the sky's fading glow. Aurora's mother nickered and dipped her head, joining the circle around her foal. Elena watched breathless as the living tableau unfolded, predator and prey, reunited not in conflict but in compassion. Freya lowered her body to lie beside Aurora's shoulder, while the wolves formed an outer perimeter and the herd assembled inside, a protective embrace from both sides. A soft breeze carried the scent of pine and sage, weaving through the group. Aurora's mother brushed her muzzle against Freya's nape, a gesture of acceptance that transcended species. Freya responded with a gentle exhalation, ears tilting back in contentment. Elena raised her camera just once, capturing the harmony of the moment. The coat of chestnut silk against silver fur, the circle of life reimagined. She lowered the device and stepped forward slowly, mindful not to disrupt the reunion. Aurora lifted her head and met Elena's eyes, then turned back to Freya as if to say goodbye. Freya rose, giving a final nudge to the foal, and then, with the herd moving as one, faded into the gathering dusk. Aurora's neck arched as she watched. Then she trotted to her mother, whinnying with joy. Under the twilight sky, Elena stood alone in the meadow, the echoes of hoofbeats and paw prints fading into night. In that reunion of souls, she understood that compassion could bridge the deepest divides, a truth she would carry into every story she told. Aurora's world had grown larger since the day she first opened her eyes in the ditch, but nothing felt as comforting as the gentle nuzzle that greeted her each morning. Freya stood at the edge of the clearing as dawn's first light painted the sky in blush pink, her posture relaxed and tail sweeping in quiet welcome. Aurora trotted over, her steps steady and sure, and pressed her muzzle against Freya's flank. In response, Freya lowered her head and licked the foal's forehead, a tender ritual that had become their greeting. The herd paused nearby, watching in respectful silence as predator and prey shared this moment of kinship. Elena observed from the forest line, notebook forgotten at her side. She held her breath, savoring the bond that time and adversity had forged. Each morning, Freya stayed by Aurora's side until the herd bade farewell, then melted back into the pines, returning each night to stand vigil once more. Today felt different. Freya's eyes held a serenity that spoke of acceptance, as though she had found a purpose beyond the pack. Aurora whinnied softly, and Freya responded with a low rumble that vibrated through the crisp air. The rhythm of that sound, wolf call and full nicker, became a dawn chorus more powerful than any song. Aurora dipped her head and nuzzled Freya's chest, then pranced back to join her mother and siblings. The herd moved as one across the meadow, but Freya remained behind, her gaze following the foal until she vanished into tall grasses. Today, she did not follow. Instead, she turned toward the forest and paused. Elena stepped forward, heart pounding. Freya lifted her muzzle and sniffed the breeze before meeting Elena's eyes. In that look, Elena read gratitude, a silent thank you for honoring the wolf's choice and safeguarding their secret. Freya's tail lifted in acknowledgement, then swept low as she stepped back, disappearing among the trees. Elena exhaled, tears of joy slipping free. The meadow felt sacred, the air charged with possibility. Freya's welcome had evolved into a partnership of equals, two souls bound by compassion. And as the sun climbed higher, Elena knew the world had witnessed a miracle whispered each dawn. A wolf's greeting that transcended instinct, welcoming a foal into a circle of trust. Dawn unfolded in a symphony of pastel light as Aurora stepped into the meadow, her coat gleaming with renewed vitality. Freya emerged from the tree line, followed by two younger wolves, their movements unhurried and respectful. The herd gathered in a loose semicircle, hooves brushing dew-laden grass. Aurora halted beside a shallow pool reflecting the rosy sky. Freya sat on her haunches opposite the foal, noses aligned. The ritual began. Aurora lowered her head and drank, each sip a declaration of trust. Freya mirrored her, laps of water sending ripples across the glassy surface. In that mirrored action, predator and prey shared nourishment in silent communion. Birdsong rose around them, larks and meadowlarks greeting the sun. The herd hummed its own chorus of soft wickers and gentle neighs, standing sentinel in solemn respect. Behind them, the forest remained hushed, as though nature itself held its breath. Elena watched from a respectful distance, heart filled with wonder. She keyed her recorder, capturing the scene, not for proof this time, but to preserve memory. The wolves' coats and horses' manes caught the light, undulating with each breath as day fully dawned. Aurora straightened and nuzzled Freya's neck. The matriarch responded with a low exhalation, whiskers brushing the foal's mane. Together they rose, standing side by side, a seamless span of fur and flesh. The younger wolves drifted back into the trees, allowing the central pair their moment. A soft breeze carried the scent of sage and pine, weaving through the assembly. Aurora stomped a hoof, a playful gesture that drew a slow tail wag from Freya, an echo of joy. The herd's tension melted, and several horses ambled forward, merging the circle. For minutes that felt like eternity, horses and wolves stood in shared space, united not by instinct but by choice. No hunger, no fear, only an unspoken covenant of empathy. As the sun crested the horizon, shafts of gold cut through the mist, illuminating this communion of lives. When Aurora's mother nudged her foal away to graze, Freya dipped her head in farewell, then melted back into the trees. Aurora watched until the last stripe of shadow slipped away, then trotted back to join her herd. Elena remained, absorbing the profound peace of that dawn communion, an emblem of a world where bridges could be built between even the oldest divides. 3 months later, nestled in a sheltered valley 30 miles from Carson City, the Wild Crossroads Sanctuary stood as a testament to the bond between Aurora and Freya. Fenced pastures rolled into juniper-dotted meadows, while shaded groves offered refuge for resident wolves. A low visitor center perched on the hillside, its windows framing the sanctuary's heart. Elena paced the observation deck each morning, binoculars in hand. Below, Aurora, now a sleek yearling with a chestnut coat gleaming like burnished copper, grazed beside a shallow stream. Freya reclined nearby on a sun-warmed rock, her gray pelt mottled with age, but her amber eyes bright with pride. The two shared quiet moments of companionship before their respective herds and packs roused for the day. Visitors, guided by Elena and her team, walked a raised boardwalk that wove through enclosures, stopping at glass-fronted observation rooms. Their interactive displays told the story of the foal and wolf who rewrote nature's script. Children pressed small hands against the glass as they watched Aurora prance and Freya circle at a respectful distance, an image that left many speechless.